Hello and welcome back to Trigger Smart. We're going to talk today about the bullet fragments and all the information that's going on from that perspective. And it's interesting because it was from 3 months ago, like 3.5 months ago. And this is something that has been out and they haven't really been talking about in the pre-trials at all. I haven't seen any other information about this. And then all of a sudden this document's just available. There's definitely more testing going on. So this is not completely over yet, but as you already heard, they haven't been able to match the bullet to the gun directly yet. It was inconclusive, which means that it neither matches nor doesn't match the gun. The only thing they can say really is it's consistent with a 30 caliber bullet from a 30 caliber gun, which could be any 30 caliber gun. So without further testing, they're not really going to know if they can actually match anything at all back to Tyler Robinson's gun, period. So that's what we're going to be looking for here in the near future. But let's go through this information, and I'll make it as simple to understand as possible. We have this X post here from Blake Neff. The ATF analysis of the bullet used to kill Charlie has been made public, and it confirms that the bullet was from the 30 caliber class, of which the 30-06 is a member. The analysis also found that the Mauser 98 rifle found at the scene could potentially have fired the bullet. So based on everything I've seen, this is correct so far. It is of the 30 caliber class, and it is supposedly a 30-06 based on the cartridges, which is the full bullet with the casing and everything together that they found. And also they say that it is a Mauser 98 30-06 rifle. We're going to get more into that too. The document that we're talking about is this defense motion that was filed on January 9th, 2026, and this is State of Utah versus Tyler Robinson. The state wants to perform additional forensic testing, virtual comparison microscopy, or VCM, on a single bullet jacket fragment recovered from the victim's body. The defense is asking the court to stop any further alteration or testing of this fragile evidence until the defense expert can examine and photograph it first. If the court allows testing to proceed, the defense requests either 1, to have their expert observe it, or 2, to have the entire process video recorded. The ATF already did testing. They did the LCM style where they visually check, and they were the ones who said it was inconclusive. So now the FBI wants to go in and do more testing, but the defense is saying, we want to have somebody there, or we want you to videotape it. And the FBI has basically already said no. It goes against their policies. They're not going to do that. So that's why this motion is being filed. And then it will be up to the court, I guess, what happens after that. And it could be also by this point in time, I mean, this was 3 months ago, they could have already agreed on how they're going to proceed forward. The defense argues this is critical because the bullet fragment is only physical link potentially tying the defendant's rifle to the crime. So this is something that if this falls through, this looks really bad. There's obviously other things they can use if they have video of him on the roof, for example, taking the shot, previous phone messages and texts and things that maybe he was planning this ahead of time. Things like that could be used as well, even if this whole bullet thing falls through. The proposed FBI testing involves physically manipulating the fragile fragment with pliers, folding it back, which risks further damage, detachment of pieces, or permanent alteration, making independent defense testing impossible. There's some evidence that the ATF has already done this. So the FBI has already gotten a piece that broke off when they received it. So if the ATF has already done this folding back, then it wouldn't be the FBI necessarily that's causing this issue. And they're going to try and do it in a way that it doesn't damage anything further. So any like specific markings or tooling and things they say, like he carved in, hate speech or whatever it was, they would try to not touch those areas and do it in an area where it won't really affect the case. This would violate the defendant's constitutional rights to due process, a fair trial, presenting a complete defense, and in a capital case, heightened reliability. So the main things they're looking at is Tyler Robinson is moving for a temporary order prohibiting the state or FBI any further testing or alteration of the bullet jacket fragment until the motion is resolved. Okay, so more delays. But this would be a good thing for the defense if the bullet can still not be traced back to the gun and the bullet and Tyler. And this would be a horrible thing for them if this testing eventually does go through and they can somehow tie it back. Primary request allows a defense expert to examine and photograph the fragment before any further changes. December 22nd, 2025, the state filed notice of intent for non-destructive VCM testing, which is that 3D imaging, on the bullet jacket fragments and metallurgical testing on leg fragments. And the metallurgical testing is for them to identify the types of leads and metals and things and the compounds and the percentage of those different compounds in it. And they can also go as far as like ion testing. So this is something where they try to link back. Maybe if he has another box of ammunition at home, they can possibly link the 3 that they found along with the spent and broken fragments. They can link that back to some other stash he has at home. And that would be even more evidence that he fired these specific ones. VCM uses 3D scanning and the data can be shared. Based on previous testing, it looks like the lead fragments are unsuitable for comparison. So that's why they would have to do metallurgical testing. They can't actually look at it for any type of visual comparison because the pieces are either too small, too damaged, or too deformed in some kind of way to get anything from it. One of the big arguments here is that the bullet jacket is material exculpatory evidence under California versus Trombetta 1984. The ATF results already show it does not conclusively link to the rifle apparent exculpatory value. Only one such fragment exists. Defense cannot get comparable evidence anywhere else. A lot of people jumped the gun, no pun intended, and they basically said that because the bullet wasn't able to be matched conclusively to the gun, to Tyler's gun, supposedly, that somehow he's innocent and there's no other stuff that can convict him. Well, I mean, video alone could convict him, and they have like 300 terabytes or something like that, 325 terabytes, can't remember exactly what it was, of video from the campus and things like that. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff he still has to get through, a lot of other hoops and things he has to jump through. But based on this, it's not looking good so far. But these other tests could change the result. This here's the portion you're seeing a lot on social media. It says the Exhibit 6 consists of one .30 caliber class deformed, damaged bullet jacket fragment. And typically, a bullet jacket can be on many different types of ammunition. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was a full metal jacket or something like that. It could be a jacket around soft core or something similar. But we have at least part of a jacket that is deformed and damaged and possibly damaged even more after the ATF handled it. And then we have 4 lead fragments. So what this means is, based on the fact that there was supposedly an autopsy, that the 4 lead fragments were inside of Charlie. So this could be one bullet broken into 4 or more pieces, and they had the jacket as well. So this would be consistent with the things they've been saying, that a bullet entered his body and that it did not exit, right? You would expect to see something similar to this. You would see lead fragments, maybe a fully intact bullet, depending on what it hits, and you would see the jacket possibly deformed or damaged, especially if it was like a hollow point or something similar. And again, they say that the bullet jacket fragment cannot be identified or excluded as having been fired from the Exhibit 1 rifle based on the agreement. So Exhibit 1 rifle, that would be the Mauser 98, and we're going to look at more of that here in a minute. It also says here, Exhibit 6B through 6C, the lead fragments, the 4 pieces are not suitable for microscopic comparison. That is why they're going to have to do metallurgical comparison, and they only need one of them and only a scrape of one of them to do that. And the state responded that the FBI's policies, which will not change for the case, do not allow a defense examiner to be present or a videotaping of the examination. So on the same day that they got that response, defense said, we'll have to file a motion with the court requesting appropriate relief. And they continue to say, given the ATF test results, it is evident that an independent comparative analysis of any individual markings on the bullet fragments confirming that the individual characteristics do not match bullets test fired from the rifle the state seeks to connect to Mr. Robinson, which is the Mauser 98, or even confirming there are insufficient individual characteristics to exclude or include identification of a particular weapon, an individualized match would by itself or in combination with the ATF results raise a reasonable doubt as to his guilt, or at least raise a lingering doubt in any penalty phase, assuming the court found such expert testimony reliable enough to be admitted. So next, let's look at the rifle. And I want to say really quick, too, that people were saying, isn't this the technology that Candace says is like dead and hasn't been used for decades? No, this isn't. This is something different. This is newer stuff. A lot of this stuff has never been used before outside of like federal cases and not even in some federal cases yet. And this is much more modern. So there is some old technology and ways that they used to try and match these things up that resulted in people rightfully or wrongfully being accused. And parts of that stuff that was considered questionable isn't really used anymore. Some of this stuff, some people do question, especially the newest stuff. So we'll see where this goes. We'll see if they actually allow it in court. Like I said, this is at a federal level. It's not even local. Like police and stuff aren't using this. This is just like a federal FBI type thing. And it's not even fully accepted in courts yet. So we'll see how far it actually goes, and we'll see if they can actually use the testing evidence and results that they get, if they can actually use that at all in court. And I do want to point out really quick that there are some takedown models of the Mauser, like the Mauser 66, 66S. And what that allows you to do is take a couple screws out. They were like hex, like number 3 hex or something similar. And you could take these 2 screws out and you could pull the barrel off. These guns had very long stocks that were heavy wood. And I'll show you some alternatives, how you can kind of customize them and change them later. Not to the point of like me showing you how to customize a gun, but just the fact that you can actually purchase aftermarket stuff for these, including the entire gun itself, minus the barrel. Now these guns, based on the serial number, which might not be the full serial number, right? We're only getting 4 numbers. It's 8863. Typically, they would have a letter with it as well, like B8863. This was for the early like World War I, World War II models. These were the ones that were not takedown models. And then later models like the Model 66 takedown, they would have like 5 or 6 numbers along with some letters. So the fact that it's 8863, it could just be a shortened version, like the last 4 of a social, right? Maybe they're shortening it for identification, but not giving all the information away. But if it is 8863 with some kind of letter before it, it's very likely that this is not a takedown model, which means it could not be broken down. And even if it was a takedown model, we know that he didn't have enough time, right? So if it was him on the roof, the shooting happens and he runs and jumps off right away, even that's sketchy. But imagine having to sit there and actually like unscrew a couple screws before you could actually get off, right? There's no way that happened. And unless they show me on 4K on camera, I'm never going to believe that that happened. And they've not really talked about it since. So I think they kind of dropped that piece that he like assembled it and disassembled it and all that kind of stuff. So let's meet the gun. The Mauser 98, also known as the Gewehr 98 or G98, is a German-designed bolt-action rifle introduced in 1898, German Empire during World War I. Typically produced by Waffenfabrik Mauser in Oberndorf am Neckar. I know I brutally murdered that. I apologize. I probably did not say that anywhere near correct. And this is a commercial model 98 series. They were made by Mauser for export or civilian markets. This is what they're saying this is, and also based on the serial number. I searched for that as well. Could not find the exact gun, but based on the serial 8863, assuming there's a letter somewhere in there, this is what they came up with. 1898 it was adopted. From 1898 to 1918, over 9 million produced in total. Serial number context. So 8863 is a 4-digit serial number common on early Gewehr 98Ss. German military production typically used blocks of 1 through 9999, sometimes with a letter suffix like A or K for later blocks in the same year. This places it likely in the early to mid production run for whichever year it came from, most likely between 1900 and 1917, but it could be a later commercial or post-war rifle. Many surviving examples were reworked post-war into hunting sporters, and we're going to look at that here in a second as well. And here's an example. So we have this Mauser. You can see it has this long, heavy, single-piece stock, right? Goes all the way through the entire length of the gun. Even if he took this barrel off, say in the instance that he actually did that and pulled it off somehow, he's only taken off maybe 4 inches, right? So he said would have to take this whole entire heavy piece of wood and put that down his pant leg or try and hide it in a backpack or something similar. These are typically like 42 or 44 inches long. So I don't know any backpacks, especially like the one that this person was supposedly wearing, that this would fit into. Here's a couple more pictures. You get the idea. It's the same long stock, and then it has this barrel on top. And in later models, you could unscrew a couple of screws and just pull the barrel off pretty easily and like basically completely disassemble it. And this is the bolt. So it will look something similar to this. They said that this was a bolt action rifle, and they said that they found a casing in here still from the shot, which they also said was fired, right? So they can confirm that the one that was inside the gun was fired by that gun because they fired another round supposedly, and were able to match it somehow to say that, yeah, that gun fired that casing. Now you'll notice that these are all wood so far. This one's painted black, but they also have synthetic stocks that you can do after the fact. I had to do some digging as well because the earlier models were 7.92 by 57 millimeter Mauser, also known as 8 millimeter Mauser. So that would automatically disqualify that gun. But there are some later versions that are 30-06. And like I said earlier, there's been a lot of them that have been converted for sport and hunting. And what they did is they would basically swap the barrel out for like a 30-06, for example, and even change the wooden stock to a synthetic stock that was shorter and more sporty and had better grips and things like that. So they could basically customize it to their heart's content. The thing that's interesting about the 8mm Mauser and the 30-06 is that they're very similar ballistically. And there was one point where Candace actually said that someone told her, like a neighbor or friend or someone told her in the family, maybe Lance's family, that it had specialized ammo. And that might be like this 8mm Mauser, right? But they're saying that they have 30-06 cartridges with this one right now. Now, I do want to point out that no original German military Gewehr 98s that would match that serial number in those years that they think it is, they were never factory produced in 30-06, okay? This doesn't mean that they can't be 30-06. It just means they were not originally that way. So this would be a modified firearm if that's the case with this one. It does say that pre-World War II and post-World War II commercial Mauser 98 sporters made by Mauser Oberndorf, they were occasionally offered in 30-06 for export models, especially to the Americas, where 30-06 ammo was abundant and cheap. So that's where this piece comes in, that it could be a 30-06. And this here is an example of one that was aftermarket changed. So you can see the stock is much shorter. The previous one would come all the way out to like there, and maybe that front section piece can come off. This may be synthetic. It looks like it could be real wood, but it could also be synthetic. And they do some other customizations as well. But you can pick all these different styles. But basically what they would do is they would just take apart the gun and they would put the parts into a new stock. And as you can see, there's many different variations of how you can customize it, but you get the point. Now this one here, this is one of the similar takedown versions. This is the Mauser 66. This is the one where a couple of screws could basically make it come completely apart as far as the barrel and the base. I couldn't find a length on these aftermarket stocks, but I'm guessing they're probably shorter, much shorter than the 40 inches. But again, he wouldn't have time to take it apart, so I wouldn't put much stock in that. See what I did there? And here you can see a Mauser. This one is broken down. I believe this is a Model 66, which is the takedown version. They say Tyler had a Model 98, but you can see how they can take out the bolt and the trigger groups and everything else with a couple of screws here, and they can basically break it down, but that takes time. So what's the takeaway from all this? Well, there's definitely a jacket, they say, and there are some bullet fragments that are lead. And if that's the case, then that means that if this is legit, then that means that Charlie did have an autopsy or at least some kind of medical examination initially where they pulled this stuff out of his body. And this stuff is being presented as evidence. And it looks like so far they've not been able to match it. But based on further testing, they may be able to actually somehow link this to him or link this to ammunition he has at his house or Lance's house or something else. But it does appear at the moment that this could end up being helpful and exculpatory evidence for defense. So let me know your thoughts based on what you see here in this document and the testing. We know this is coming up. Do you think they're going to be able to find something to link the bullet back to Tyler and his gun? And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this around. And if you want to help out the channel, there are links down in the description. And I'll see you on the next one.